Breaking. Prince William just stormed out of Labour's annual conference in the middle of Keir Starmer's keynote address, and what he did next has detonated a political earthquake so powerful it could bring down the government within 72 hours. Witnesses say the future king stood up, locked eyes with the Prime Minister and walked out without saying a single word, while 2,000 Labour delegates froze in total disbelief. Minutes later, Buckingham Palace released a statement so explosive that constitutional scholars are calling it the most unprecedented royal intervention in modern British history, and leaked WhatsApp messages between senior royals now reveal a plan that could change Britain forever. If you want to understand how this constitutional meltdown ends, hit subscribe right now, because the next 48 hours will decide the future of the United Kingdom. Here's what triggered the most dramatic royal intervention since 1936. 3 days earlier, Starmer announced he would deliver his conference speech not in a safe Labour stronghold, but at the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Centre, right in Westminster, just 400 yards from Parliament. His message was unmistakable. Labour would push for what he called democratic modernisation, including sweeping reforms to unelected institutions. Those two words sent panic through palace corridors. At first, Prince William had no intention of attending. Royal protocol forbids direct involvement in party politics. The monarchy stays neutral. It stays silent. It stays above the fight. But at 9:47 a.m. yesterday morning, everything changed. Insiders say William received a top-secret briefing from his private secretary containing leaked excerpts from Starmer's planned speech. What he saw in those pages forced him to make a decision that shattered 300 years of royal political neutrality. According to royal sources, William immediately called his father at Balmoral. The conversation lasted 34 minutes, an eternity in royal terms. Former palace staff say such long calls almost never happen unless something historic is unfolding. One insider described it as a son asking his father for permission to do something they both knew would alter the course of British history. By 11 a.m, the choice had been made. William would attend the conference, not as a ceremonial figure, but as a witness. And if Starmer crossed the line, they believed he would, William had full authority to act however he saw fit. At exactly 2:15 p.m, Starmer walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. Cameras panned across the audience and briefly landed on Prince William in the third row, dressed in a navy suit with no royal insignia. He looked like an ordinary attendee, but those who understood protocol saw the message. He was there as a citizen, not a prince. For 20 minutes, William sat motionless, calm, unreadable. Then at minute 23, the moment that changed everything, Starmer said, "Britain in 2025 cannot be governed by institutions designed in 1725. We will modernise every unelected body that wields power without accountability. The House of Lords will be abolished. The honours system will be reformed, and yes, if necessary, we will re-examine the constitutional role of the monarchy." The room erupted. Cheers, gasps, shock. But Prince William went dead still. Witnesses say his face drained of colour, his jaw tightened and his hands gripped the chair so hard his knuckles went white. For 47 seconds he didn't move. Then, without warning, he stood. No announcement, no hesitation, just a long, piercing stare straight at Starmer, and then he walked toward the exit. 2,000 people watched in stunned silence as the future King of England walked out on the Prime Minister during a live national broadcast. Starmer froze mid-sentence. His teleprompter was useless, history was unfolding in front of him, and he knew it. Security footage, later broadcast on national TV, showed what happened next in the corridor. William stopped, turned to his protection officer and said, "Make sure every outlet knows I left deliberately." This wasn't a break. This was a statement. But the political shockwave was just beginning. Across Britain, thousands of pensioners already struggling under Labour's new means testing rules were telling their stories, real people facing brutal choices. A 72-year-old former nurse skipping meals, a 68-year-old widow sitting in darkness after 6 p.m, an 81-year-old ex-miner saying he won't vote Labour again because they attack the Queen's grandson while we choose between medicine and food. While the Prime Minister talked about restructuring the monarchy, millions of ordinary working-class Brits were suffering, and they felt betrayed. Veterans groups issued a blistering statement: "While we freeze, he fights the crown." The anger was spreading, videos were going viral, lifelong Labour voters were turning on the party in real time. And then, something happened that no one in Britain has witnessed in the television era. At 6:32 p.m, just 4 hours after William's walkout, King Charles addressed the nation directly, not a palace statement, not a written press release, a live personal broadcast across every major network. Standing in the drawing room at Balmoral, Charles looked into the camera and said, "The Crown exists to serve the British people, to provide stability, continuity and unity in times of division. My son acted today not in defiance of democratic politics, but in defence of the constitutional balance that has served this nation for centuries. When that balance is threatened, silence becomes complicity. We will not be silent." It was seismic. Experts called it the most politically charged royal statement since the abdication crisis of 1936. A former Supreme Court justice called it politically nuclear, and palace insiders claim Charles rewrote the statement 7 times, removing diplomatic language and replacing it with blunt warnings that made advisors visibly nervous. They begged him not to choose sides. He replied, "I'm not choosing sides, I'm choosing Britain." But what came next turned a constitutional crisis into a full political meltdown. And within minutes, everything inside the palace shifted. Senior aides were split. Half of them warned William that stepping in now would drag the monarchy into a political storm. The other half said the country was heading toward a constitutional disaster, and that if he stayed silent, it would be the biggest mistake of his life behind the scenes. The cabinet was scrambling, emergency calls were made, ministers were begging the palace not to escalate the situation. One even warned that if William refused again, it could trigger the most serious standoff between the Crown and the government in decades. But the real shock came at 3:21 p.m. For the first time in years, Kensington Palace released a statement that didn't go through Downing Street, and the message was unmistakable. The Prince of Wales would continue his engagements exactly as planned, and no political request would alter his public duties. That word, political, hit like an explosion. It was a direct challenge to the Prime Minister's office, a line the royals almost never cross. The fallout was instant. Government officials accused the palace of undermining national security. Royal insiders fired back, saying the government was using security concerns as cover for something much bigger, something they weren't willing to keep quiet about anymore. Reporters outside Kensington Palace were stunned. Within minutes, cameras were rolling, headlines were exploding, and every major network was running the same breaking update. Britain was facing a constitutional showdown unlike anything in modern history. And then came the final blow. A senior royal leaked that the Prime Minister's request was not just unusual, it was unprecedented. No heir to the throne had ever been asked to suspend public duties for months due to government pressure. That leak changed everything. By evening, the palace and Downing Street weren't speaking. Advisors were warning the king that this dispute could spiral into a crisis that would shake the very foundation of the monarchy, and officials close to the Prime Minister feared he had crossed a line he couldn't walk back from. Because now the country wasn't just asking what happened, they were asking why. And the answer, according to multiple insiders, is a story far more explosive than anyone expected. And I'm about to break down exactly what that is, and why this moment could redefine the future of Britain.